Have you ever imagined spending the final years of your life in a nursing home? If someone had told me that at 77, I would spend 2 months there, I would have laughed. I always believed I was strong enough, independent enough, to never need such a place. At least not yet. But life has its own way of teaching us lessons, often when we least expect it. I entered the nursing home thinking it was temporary, just a short stay for recovery. But those 2 months changed me in ways I had never experienced in my 77 years. They opened my eyes to harsh truths about aging, regret, and the true value of life. Some lessons were painful, others enlightening, but all were necessary. Today, I want to share with you 7 valuable lessons that I believe everyone, no matter their age, needs to hear. Because sooner or later, we all grow old. And when that time comes, how will you choose to live your life? Here, you don't need to like or subscribe. But if you believe this content has value, share your story or simply type number 9. Because sometimes, one small action can help someone find exactly what they need. So, what are those 7 lessons? Let's dive in, because they might just change how you see the rest of your life. Number 1, loneliness. It's not just a feeling. It's a heavy burden, especially as we get older. When I first arrived at the nursing home, I thought the hardest part would be the physical recovery. But what I quickly learned is that the biggest struggle wasn't physical at all. It was emotional. Loneliness was everywhere. There were residents who hadn't seen a single visitor in months, sometimes even years. Their children were too busy. Their friends were gone. And no matter how kind and caring the staff was, nothing could replace the warmth of family. I remember talking to one gentleman who used to be the life of the party. He was sharp, funny, and full of great stories. But as time went on, the visits from his loved ones grew less frequent. The sparkle in his eyes started to fade. He told me, "The hardest part isn't losing your strength. It's feeling like the world has moved on without you." That hit me hard. Sitting there, day after day, you start to notice it more and more. The sound of quiet hallways, the empty chairs at the dinner table, the way some people light up, even if just for a moment, when a visitor finally walks through the door. It's clear, loneliness isn't just a passing emotion. It's a weight that settles on you, one that no amount of medication or physical therapy can lift. What I took away from those moments is this: we need to build stronger, more meaningful connections while we still can. When I look back now, I wish I had spent less time chasing financial success and more time creating memories with my family and friends. Because in the end, it's not the money, the stuff, or even the health that stays with you. It's the people who are there, who care, who show up. Number 2, health is more valuable than wealth. I met a man once, back in my nursing home days, who was probably one of the wealthiest people in the room, at least on paper. He had been a successful businessman, with properties, luxury cars, and stories of travel to places most of us only dream of. But none of that mattered anymore. When I met him, he couldn't eat without assistance, couldn't walk on his own, couldn't even stand without help. His wealth, impressive as it was, couldn't buy back his strength, his independence, or his health. I remember him telling me, "All those years I spent building an empire, I never thought twice about my body. I always thought I could fix it later. But now I see, there is no later." And those words stuck with me. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? You can have all the money in the world, but if your body won't cooperate, what's the point? Sure, money can buy medical care, a comfortable bed, maybe even a good doctor or a private nurse, but it can't buy the ability to jump out of bed in the morning, go for a walk, or play with your grandchildren. It can't reverse the years of neglect. If I could go back, I'd tell my younger self to care for my health the same way I cared for my career. Exercise more, eat better, stress less. Those things are so much easier to do when you're young and strong, but we often wait too long to start. And once it's gone, no amount of money can truly bring it back. That's the lesson I learned. Health is wealth. Number 3, possessions lose their meaning. There was a time when I had a house filled with things, furniture, clothes, decorations I collected over the years. I thought those things mattered. I thought they reflected who I was, that they were part of my identity. But when I moved into the nursing home, I had to leave nearly all of it behind. I found myself living in one small room, surrounded by just a few belongings. And you know what? I didn't miss any of it. All those years I spent collecting, accumulating. What did it really give me in the end? None of it could bring me the warmth of a hug from a loved one. None of it could replace the joy of laughing with a dear friend. It was just stuff. Things I once thought were so important turned out to be nothing more than clutter. And the more I let go of them, the lighter I felt. If I could go back, I'd focus less on filling my home with things and more on filling my heart with memories. Because when you're left with just a few items, you realize that what truly matters isn't what you own. It's the people you care about, the moments you share, the love and laughter that stay with you long after the possessions are gone. Possessions are temporary. Memories and connections, they last. So, if I could share one lesson from this chapter of my life, it's this. Don't waste your time chasing things that can't love you back. Number 4. Independence is a precious gift. Imagine living your entire life, making your own decisions, choosing what to eat, where to go, how to spend your day, only to suddenly need help with the simplest tasks. That's the reality for so many people here. I see it every day. Someone who once ran their household now needs assistance just to get dressed. Another person, who was once the strong head of their family, has to rely on someone else to eat a meal or go to the bathroom. And let me tell you, losing that independence is more than frustrating. It's heartbreaking. It's not just about losing control over your body. It's about losing the freedom to be yourself. When you can no longer do what you used to do, you start to feel like you've lost a piece of who you are. So, if you're still able to move around, think clearly, and handle daily life on your own. Cherish it. Don't take it for granted. That independence is a treasure. It's something you don't fully appreciate until it's gone. Even the small things, brushing your hair, walking outside, or making a cup of coffee, are gifts. Gifts that too many people only realize they had once they can no longer do them. Here's the truth. Your independence is one of the most valuable things you have. Protect it. Honor it. Take care of your body and mind, because when the day comes that you need help for everything, you'll look back and realize just how lucky you were. Number 5. Happiness comes from the simple things. I remember a woman here, 85 years old, who always seemed to be smiling. She'd sit by the window each morning, enjoying a warm cup of tea and watching the sun come up. One day, I asked her how she managed to stay so happy. Her answer was so simple, but it stayed with me. I don't think about what I've lost. I enjoy what I still have. That was it. She wasn't focusing on the past or what might have been. Instead, she found joy in the small moments, a cheerful conversation, the feel of sunlight on her face, the sound of birds singing outside her window. And when I started paying attention, I realized just how right she was. It's not the grand, sweeping gestures that keep us happy. It's those little things we often overlook. For so much of my life, I chased after big achievements, bigger houses, better cars, more recognition. But now, I see that it's the everyday moments that bring the most joy. A kind word, a good laugh, a delicious meal. Those are the things that make life worth living. We get caught up chasing happiness, thinking we'll find it in something new or exciting, when it's been there all along in the simple pleasures of daily life. When you let go of the chase, you realize that happiness was never out of reach. It's in the small, beautiful details you experience every single day. Number 6. Forgiveness brings peace. During my time in the nursing home, I met people who carried heavy burdens. Some held onto grudges that had festered for decades against their children, old friends, or even late spouses. I could see how much pain those grudges caused, not to the people they were angry with, but to themselves. It wasn't the person who had wronged them that was suffering. It was them, trapped in their own resentment. One woman shared her story with me. Her voice trembled as she admitted, "I wish I'd forgiven my sister while she was still alive. Now it's too late." That regret stayed with me. I realized then that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself. It's not about saying their actions were okay. It's about deciding not to let those actions control your happiness any longer. When I chose to forgive, I felt a weight lift. I didn't do it because they deserved it. I did it because I deserved peace. I let go of the past, of hurtful words, missed opportunities, and painful memories that had no power to change. Suddenly, I felt lighter, as if I'd been carrying stones in my heart for years and finally set them down. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or excusing bad behavior. It's a choice you make for yourself, to stop carrying the burden. By forgiving, you don't lose strength, you gain it. You reclaim your happiness and take back the power to live your life without being defined by old wounds. If there's someone you need to forgive, do it now. Don't wait until it's too late. You deserve the peace that comes from letting go. Number 7, every day is a gift. I remember waking up one morning in the nursing home and hearing the news that a fellow resident had passed away during the night. Just the evening before, he had been laughing at dinner, sharing stories from his youth, reflecting on the life he had lived. And just like that, he was gone. That moment hit me hard. It made me realize how fragile life truly is. No matter how healthy, strong, or careful we are, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Too often, we spend our time focused on things that don't matter, worrying about problems that never happen, holding on to grudges, putting off happiness for someday. But someday is a dangerous word. It tricks us into thinking we have all the time in the world, when in reality, we don't. That's why the biggest lesson I've learned is to appreciate every single day as the precious gift that it is. Don't wait for the perfect moment to live your life. The perfect moment is now. Tell your loved ones what they mean to you. Don't save your best words for later. Create memories, not excuses. Laugh, even when things aren't perfect. Share joy, even in difficult times. Life is short, and it's these simple, genuine moments that truly matter. So when you wake up each morning, take a moment to be grateful. Make the choice to embrace the day ahead with open arms. Treasure the chance to be here, to love, to connect, and to make the most of the time you've been given. Every day is a gift. Don't let it slip away. So, what do all these lessons mean in our day-to-day lives? First, prioritize meaningful connections. Call that friend you've been meaning to catch up with. Spend quality time with family, and build relationships that fill you with warmth and joy. Second, start taking better care of your health. Move your body, eat wholesome foods, and learn to rest. Remember that your well-being is your most valuable asset. Third, let go of the pursuit of possessions. Instead, focus on creating memories. Take a walk with a loved one, explore a new hobby, or simply enjoy a moment of laughter. Fourth, treasure your independence while you still have it. Make the most of your ability to make choices, to move freely, and to live on your own terms. Fifth, find happiness in the small, simple things, like a good conversation, a beautiful sunrise, or a quiet cup of tea. Don't wait for grand events to feel content. Sixth, practice forgiveness. Release the weight of old grudges and embrace peace. It's not about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself. Finally, remind yourself that every day is a gift. Don't wait for the right time to live fully. Take the lessons from these 7 truths and start applying them today. And so, as we navigate this journey called life, let's keep these lessons close to heart. Let's not wait for circumstances to force us into reflection. Instead, let's choose today to live with intention. Treasure the people who matter, nurture your well-being, and appreciate the beauty in the smallest moments. Make forgiveness a gift you give yourself, and see each day as a chance to create memories that you and your loved ones will cherish. Here, you don't need to like or subscribe, but if you believe this content has value, share your story or simply type number 9, because sometimes one small action can help someone find exactly what they need. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many years we have, it's about how we fill those years, how we love, how we laugh, and how we live. That is what truly matters. Let's move on to another story. Have you ever felt that leaving the house no longer feels exciting, but instead just drains your energy? When I was younger, I loved going here and there, visiting friends, family, even stopping by the neighbor's house for a quick chat. But now, let's just say my couch and I have developed a deep and meaningful relationship. It's not that I don't love people. I truly cherish my relationships. But over time, I realized that not every visit brings joy. Some leave me smiling, while others leave me completely exhausted, wondering, is this still worth it? Today, I want to share 7 stories, moments that made me realize that saying no, thanks, I'll stay home, isn't about isolation. It's about choosing peace. And story number 2 and number 6 might just surprise you, because sometimes the smallest things change the way we see everything. So, grab a cup of tea, find a comfortable seat, and let's go on this little journey together. Who knows? By the end, you might just see why I prefer my slippers over my visiting shoes. Number 1. The endless staircase struggle. Mr. Richard, a 72-year-old man, had always enjoyed visiting friends. He valued deep conversations, the warmth of familiar company, and the small joy of catching up over coffee. But one particular visit changed everything. His old friend George had just moved into a beautiful 3-story house. From the outside, it was stunning, elegant, spacious, and filled with charm. When George invited Richard over to see it, he happily agreed, not realizing what awaited him inside. The moment he stepped in, he was met with a long, winding staircase. George, filled with excitement, clapped him on the back and said, "Come on, let me show you around." Richard, not wanting to seem rude, smiled and followed. The first few steps were manageable, but as they climbed higher, something changed. His breathing grew heavier, his legs felt stiff, and suddenly, the simple act of walking up the stairs felt like a mountain climb. He didn't want to show his discomfort, so he forced himself to keep up, even as his heart pounded in his chest. By the time they reached the 2nd floor, Richard felt like he had just finished a marathon. He discreetly placed a hand on the railing, pretending to admire the view while secretly catching his breath. But George, he was already halfway up to the 3rd floor, chatting away, completely unaware of Richard's silent struggle. As Richard finally made it to the top, he collapsed onto the nearest chair, barely hearing George's enthusiastic words about the view. Instead, he was focused on the realization that his body wasn't what it used to be. The stairs had defeated him, and it was a humbling, sobering moment. That night, as he got home and eased into his favorite chair, he made a quiet decision. No more multi-story house visits. It wasn't worth the struggle, the embarrassment, or the exhaustion that followed. Aging comes with changes, some small, some undeniable. Climbing stairs that once seemed effortless now felt like an uphill battle. And that's okay. From that day forward, when friends invited him over, he asked a simple question: "Do you have stairs?" If the answer was yes, he politely declined, not out of laziness, but because he had learned to respect his body's limits. Key lesson: as we age, our bodies change, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. There is no reason to push beyond our limits just to please others. If something feels exhausting, uncomfortable, or even unsafe, it's okay to say no. Prioritizing your comfort and well-being isn't giving up. It's adapting to life in a way that allows you to truly enjoy it. Number 2. The tea that wasn't tea. Mrs. Margaret, a 74-year-old woman, had always loved the ritual of tea time. A warm cup, a quiet afternoon, and good conversation. What could be better? She had spent years enjoying these simple pleasures with friends, savoring the comfort of familiar flavors like Earl Grey or chamomile. But one visit changed the way she felt about tea forever. One crisp autumn afternoon, Margaret decided to visit her old neighbor, Betty, who had recently invited her over for a special tea. Betty was known for being a kind but slightly eccentric hostess, always experimenting with new things. Margaret, expecting a cozy chat and a familiar cup of tea, happily accepted the invitation. As soon as she arrived, Betty ushered her into the living room with a bright smile. Sit down, sit down. I've made something wonderful for us," she beamed, disappearing into the kitchen. Margaret settled into the couch, looking forward to the soothing warmth of a perfectly brewed cup. A few moments later, Betty returned with 2 steaming mugs. Margaret picked up hers, inhaling deeply, only to immediately realize something was off. Instead of the gentle, fragrant aroma of tea, there was a strange, almost medicinal sweetness in the air. Still, not wanting to be rude, Margaret took a sip. Her taste buds instantly revolted. The liquid was thick, overly sweet, and had an odd bitterness that lingered long after she swallowed. She barely stopped herself from grimacing. "Betty, dear," she said carefully, forcing a polite smile. "This is different. What kind of tea is this?" Betty clapped her hands together excitedly. "Oh, it's prune juice. I thought you'd love it." Margaret nearly choked. "Prune juice." She set the mug down quickly, trying to compose herself. She wanted to be gracious, but in that moment, all she could think about was how desperately she wanted her familiar cup of tea instead of this strange, syrupy concoction. As she sat there, nodding along to Betty's cheerful conversation, she realized something. This was not the relaxing, comforting visit she had envisioned. Instead of enjoying her favorite ritual, she was trapped in a battle of politeness versus her taste buds. That night, as she returned home, she let out a sigh of relief. She walked straight to her kitchen, brewed herself the perfect cup of Earl Grey, and took a slow, satisfying sip. It was heaven, and that was the moment she made a quiet decision. From now on, tea time would happen on her own terms. Key lesson: visiting others can mean stepping into unexpected, sometimes uncomfortable situations. While it's nice to be polite, we shouldn't feel obligated to endure things that don't bring us joy. Sometimes the best company is our own, with a cup of tea brewed exactly the way we like it. Number 3. No more patience for meaningless gossip. Mrs. Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman, used to love the excitement of a good conversation. There was a time when sitting down with friends, sharing stories, and catching up on the latest news felt like a lively, enjoyable way to connect. But something changed over the years. One afternoon, Eleanor decided to visit an old acquaintance, Linda, whom she hadn't seen in a while. She thought it would be a chance to reminisce, to talk about life, family, and maybe even share some laughs over old memories. But the moment she sat down in Linda's living room, she sensed something was off. The conversation quickly took a turn. Instead of catching up on meaningful moments, Linda dove straight into gossip. Who gained weight? Who was having problems in their marriage? Who wasn't speaking to whom? At first, Eleanor nodded along, pretending to be interested, but she could feel her energy draining with every word. It wasn't lighthearted talk. It was judgment, negativity, and constant criticism of others. Every sentence seemed to focus on someone's mistakes, their flaws, their misfortunes. As Eleanor sat there, staring into her untouched cup of coffee, a deep realization hit her. This was not the kind of conversation she wanted to have anymore. She thought about how precious time had become. At this stage in life, every day was a gift, and she didn't want to waste another second engaging in negativity. She wanted to spend her time talking about things that mattered, about joy, about books, about memories that made her smile, about the things that still made life beautiful. So, she did something she had never done before. She cut the visit short. She stood up, politely excused herself, and walked out into the fresh air. As she breathed deeply, she felt lighter, as if she had left behind a weight she didn't even realize she had been carrying. That day, she made a quiet but powerful decision. She was done with meaningless, draining conversations. If a visit wasn't uplifting, nourishing, or at least enjoyable, she simply wouldn't stay. She had earned the right to be selective with her time and energy. Key lesson: as we grow older, our time and energy become more valuable than ever. There's no reason to spend them on negativity, on gossip, or on conversations that leave us feeling worse than when we arrived. If a conversation doesn't enrich your life, it's okay to walk away. Choose peace, choose meaningful moments, and most importantly, choose yourself. Number 4. Every visit feels like a trap. Mr. Henry, a 74-year-old man, had always been someone who valued friendships. He enjoyed catching up with old friends, reminiscing about the past, and sharing stories over a cup of coffee. But as he got older, he realized something frustrating. Some visits were never just a quick catch-up anymore. They felt like a trap. It all started with a seemingly harmless afternoon visit to his old friend, Frank. They had planned for a short coffee break, maybe an hour or so, just enough time to chat, and then head home for some quiet relaxation. But from the moment Henry walked through the door, he felt the invisible ropes tightening around him. Frank was overjoyed to see him, too overjoyed. "Oh, you can't leave just yet. Stay for lunch." Henry, being polite, agreed. After all, what was an extra hour? Then, after lunch came dessert. "Let's sit outside for a bit," Frank suggested. The sun was already dipping in the sky, and Henry was feeling restless. He had other plans, maybe a nap, maybe reading his book, but he didn't know how to excuse himself without seeming rude. Then came the worst part, the moment Frank said, "Well, it's getting late now. Why don't you just stay the night?" Henry froze. He didn't plan on sleeping over. He didn't bring anything with him. But how could he refuse without sounding ungrateful? And so, one small yes led to another, and before he knew it, he was trapped in a visit that lasted an entire weekend. By the time he finally left, he wasn't just exhausted, he was frustrated with himself. That visit taught him a valuable lesson. If you don't set boundaries, some people won't set them for you. From that day on, Henry changed the way he approached visits. He made sure to set clear expectations from the start. "I'd love to come by, but I can only stay for an hour." If someone tried to push him to stay longer, he smiled and firmly said, "I have things to do." And most importantly, he learned that saying no doesn't make you a bad friend. It makes you a person who values their own time. Key lesson: some visits shouldn't turn into an overnight stay or an all-day event. If you find yourself dreading the idea of being stuck in a never-ending visit, it's time to set clear limits. Your time is just as important as anyone else's, and it's okay to leave when you're ready. Being polite should never come at the cost of your own comfort. Number 5. Feeling lost in modern conversations. Mrs. Helen, a 75-year-old woman, had always considered herself a good conversationalist. She loved deep discussions, meaningful exchanges, and even the occasional chat about everyday life. But over time, she started feeling like an outsider in the very conversations she once enjoyed. One afternoon, she visited her grandniece, Olivia, a bright and energetic woman in her late 20s. Helen had always looked forward to their talks, remembering how they used to bond over books, music, and family stories. But this time, something was different. The moment Helen sat down, Olivia launched into an excited discussion about viral TikTok trends, influencers, and the latest smartphone features. Helen nodded along at first, hoping she would catch on. But the more Olivia spoke, the more she felt completely out of place. The words felt like another language: hashtags, algorithms, AI-generated content. Helen could barely keep up. Then came the moment that truly stung. "Oh, Aunt Helen, you probably wouldn't get it. It's kind of a Gen Z thing," Olivia said with a laugh. Helen smiled politely, but inside something cracked. When had she become someone people assumed wouldn't get it? She wasn't clueless. She had spent a lifetime learning, adapting, staying engaged. But at that moment, she felt invisible. She tried to shift the conversation, asking about books, history, or family traditions, but Olivia quickly lost interest. It became clear that the things Helen valued no longer had a place in these modern conversations. That day, she left with a bittersweet realization. There were some conversations she just wasn't meant to be part of anymore. She wasn't angry at Olivia. She understood that each generation speaks its own language. But it also made her question, where do I fit in now? In the weeks that followed, Helen stopped trying so hard to keep up. Instead, she sought out conversations that made her feel seen, valued, and understood. She spent more time with people who shared her interests, who enjoyed talking about things that mattered to her. And she learned that it was okay to step away from conversations that left her feeling small. Key lesson: aging doesn't mean we have to force ourselves to keep up with trends that don't interest us. If a conversation makes you feel lost or invisible, it's okay to step away and seek out people who value your voice, your stories, and your wisdom. Some conversations are just noise, but the right ones can still bring warmth, connection, and joy. Number 6. Home is the true sanctuary. Mr. William, a 77-year-old man, once loved visiting friends, going out for coffee, and keeping up with social gatherings. He believed that staying active and engaged with others was the key to a fulfilling life. But over time, something started to change. One Saturday afternoon, William had plans to visit an old friend, Robert. He had been looking forward to reminiscing about old times, sharing laughter, and catching up. But as the day went on, he felt something deep inside resisting the idea of leaving home. The cozy chair by the window, where he loved to sit and read, felt too inviting to abandon. The sunlight streaming through the curtains, the gentle hum of the kettle boiling in the kitchen. Everything about his home felt peaceful, warm, and familiar. For a moment he hesitated. Should he cancel? Would it be rude? Would Robert understand? Then a simple thought crossed his mind. Why should I force myself to go when I feel happiest right here? He picked up the phone, dialed Robert, and chuckled softly. My friend, I think today is one of those days where home is calling me to stay. And just like that, he chose himself. Instead of forcing himself into a tiring social interaction, he spent the afternoon in his favorite chair, sipping tea, reading, and simply existing in the quiet comfort of his own. The next part of this video is now available on my channel.